You're 3, 5, 10 years out from your stroke. Is there still time to regain some movement? By the end of this video, you'll understand what one of the main causes is of limited movement after a stroke, why it's possible to get movement back even years later, and I'm gonna give you some practical tips that you can start implementing today to help you on this journey. There are many complex factors that affect whether or not someone will lose movement after a stroke or be able to regain movement after a stroke. Some of those include where in the brain the stroke happened, how severe the stroke was, if somebody experiences spasticity or other complicating factors, etc. But one of the main causes is something that you actually have control over. It's a phenomenon called learned non-use. And this is essentially where you learn to not use your affected side. After a stroke, the affected or weaker side can feel really frustrating to use. It's slower, less coordinated, and just generally harder to control. A natural progression from that is that you start to use your stronger or unaffected side more often. It's easier to use, takes less time, and you can just get done what you need to get done. However, when you do this, over time, the brain learns a message. Don't bother using that weaker side because the strong side is getting things done. And so what ends up happening is the brain prunes away those neural pathways that it's not using anymore. But here's the good news. What the brain can learn, it can also unlearn, and vice versa. Our brains have this amazing ability to adapt, change, and reorganize called neuroplasticity. If you've ever watched any of my other videos, you've probably heard me talk about this before, and for good reason. Currently, neuroplasticity is the best tool that we have to facilitate stroke recovery. While our brains are more plastic in childhood and that ability slows down as we age, it is available and present throughout our lifetimes, and it does not stop. Neuroplasticity allows our brains to form new connections, strengthen existing connections, and essentially rewire itself based on what we do. Now here's the caveat. That doesn't mean that making those brain changes is easy, quick, or that you will regain all of your movement. What's more likely to happen is that you will notice very small improvements over a long period of time, but eventually you will realize that you're doing the thing that you are working towards. Let's think of neuroplasticity in the context of learning a new skill, whether it's learning a musical instrument, learning a new language, or a new sport like pickleball. At first, it feels awkward. It takes a lot of extra time. It goes really slowly. But with practice, it gets easier, quicker, and smoother. And movement recovery after a stroke is the same. So before we get to those practical tips, let's briefly cover some basic principles of neuroplasticity that are a key foundation for you to understand in order to apply these practical tips effectively in your home rehab program. There are technically 10, but I just want to cover a few. Repetition matters. The more you practice, the more repetitions you do, the stronger those pathways are going to get. But repetition alone is not enough. Intensity also matters. So it's not just moving once or twice or mindlessly doing repetitions while you watch TV. It's challenging your brain and your muscles regularly with increased speed, increased repetitions, increased complexity or effort. Specificity matters. Practicing the exact task or movements that you're trying to get better at is more powerful than just doing random movement. And lastly, salience matters. Working on tasks, activities that are meaningful to you will actually help your brain make changes faster. So understanding this underlying mechanism of neuroplasticity and the principles we need to use, how do you convince your brain to start paying attention to your weaker side so that you can get more movement back? By giving it consistent opportunities to practice. And my favorite way to start this is with a technique called mental practice or motor imagery. And the reason why is this is something that can be done even if you have little to no movement at all, because that's a complaint I hear often. Elise, how am I supposed to get movement back or start movement if I don't have any to start with? You start with mental practice, aka motor imagery. This is where you're very specifically practicing a task, an activity, an exercise with your affected limbs in your mind. And this works because it actually lights up the same areas of the brain as if you were doing the physical movement. But you do want to be very specific in how you go about practicing that task in your brain. You want to concentrate very hard on how it feels to move that arm, that hand, that leg. You want to think about, what does it smell like wherever you're practicing this? What are you looking at? What are you hearing? You want to try to engage those senses in your mind as much as possible to essentially help trick your brain. Now, it's important to note that if you do have some level of movement, this technique is best used in conjunction with actual physical movement and exercise. So let's go to tip number 2. Simply use it to improve it. And I know that this sounds really basic, but it can be hard to do or intentionally do when it is easier and it takes less time to do things with your stronger side. So if you don't have significant time restraints and you're trying to get something done, maybe getting dressed, taking a shower, incorporate your affected or weaker side as much as possible. Just by getting things moving, even if you cannot do the full task with it. Let's say that you're washing up in the shower, and maybe you can hold a washcloth and you can wash your other arm, but you can't get all the way up to your shoulder. That's fine. Do the part of the task that you're capable of doing with your weaker or affected side. The more that you use that weaker side is going to send a message to the brain, prioritizing those pathways to those limbs. Number 3 is doing task-specific training. And while there are lots of things that go into task-specific training, the takeaway for you, if you're doing this on your own at home, is to engage your affected side in everyday activities that you want and need to be able to do, whether that's picking up a cup, buttoning a shirt, or standing up from a chair. The brain is going to learn best when you're doing the tasks that you actually want to get better at. And lastly, incorporate high-dose, high-intensity rehab into your home program. I just made a full video on this last week that you can go check out if you want the details. But the high-level overview is that the basics and doing 10 reps a day of something is simply not enough for your brain to make those neuroplastic changes we're looking for. On a daily basis, we're actually shooting for between 300 to 800 reps of the movement that you want to get back. And unfortunately, this is not usually performed in traditional therapy, nor is it recommended because it still is not the best practice consideration. It takes a long time for new research and evidence to move into actual clinical practice. But this is what you need if you are trying to really regain movement, even if it's been years since your stroke. And again, if you're looking for really concrete ways of how to get those reps in, how to get that increased intensity into your home rehab program, you can go check out my previous video to learn more about the details. So yes, there is still time to regain some movement after your stroke, but recovery is going to look different for everyone. It doesn't mean that your progress will happen quickly, that it will come easily. It's going to take a lot of work and effort on your part, a lot of repetitions. But making progress and making gains is possible at any stage after your stroke. Leave me a comment and let me know, how long has it been since your stroke? And are you still seeing progress? I'm sure other survivors would love to know. Of course, please support the channel however you can. Like this video, subscribe, become a channel member by clicking on the join button, or leave us a super thanks by clicking in the YouTube bar below. A huge thank you to all of the donors who make this nonprofit possible, with a special thanks to Heather G, Ryan D, Modus Nova, and Joseph M in our Empowerer tier on Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.